Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are about to begin this second meeting of the Planning Commission for the new year. We will launch into our public hearings scheduled for this evening in just a moment, but before we do that, we'll take a minute for action on the minutes of our previous meeting held last month. Is there a motion on those minutes?
Approval of the minutes of January 13th, 2020.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The minutes of the January 13th meeting are approved, allowing us to move into our schedule of public hearings for this evening. So just by way of introduction for those who are unfamiliar with this process, as each application is announced from the podium, we would ask the applicant or their representative to come forward to the podium, provide their name and address for the record, and then a brief summary of the application. Following any questions from the commission members, we will invite members of the public who wish to speak in favor of the application to do so. And then similarly, we will extend an invitation to members of the public who wish to speak in opposition to the application to do so. And where comments are made in opposition, we will encourage the applicant to return to the podium to address those comments made in opposition. So with that, let us begin. Bless you.
Good evening, Commission members, Mr. Kulik. The first public hearing this evening is a continuation from January 13th, and this is a special permit for a restaurant at 1706 Erie Boulevard East. 1700 Realty Inc. is the owner, and Exal Torres Lopez is the applicant. It lies within an industrial Class A zoning district. The Commission held this open to get clarification from engineering about some comments with respect to stormwater management. I believe we have included those in your packet. So that's the introduction.
Thank you. We did indeed receive those comments as part of the application. I see Mr. Kosoff is here, who was here last time, and I would invite you to the podium if there's anything new to add. If there's nothing new, no need to repeat the presentation from last time, but if there's any updated information that you want to make us aware of, that would be appropriate.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here. I don't get too many opportunities to be in the spotlight. And I have two items to tell you about. First of all...
Excuse me, just before you start, can you just state your name and address
Yeah,
again?
my name is Alan Kosoff. I'm an architect, and plans were given to you at two previous hearings. And the Planning Commission is rather intent on having certain landscaping work done around the site, which my clients never expected had to be done. My clients are Mr. and Mrs. Torres Lopez. They are Mexicans, and they intended to have a Mexican restaurant and have employment for their 3 children there. So they didn't expect that this would be denied, but so it happened that we're going in the direction of a denial. Now, my work was confined, architectural work, to the building, and I didn't have anything in my contract to deal with the site work. So, discussion with Mr. and Mrs. Torres Lopez, I suggested that they have a landscape architect continue with this that could be more in conformance with what the Planning Commission wants and to accomplish what they need within their budget. So they are in the process. I believe they've already hired Ed Keplinger, landscape architect. I spoke to him the other day, and I don't think he's had a meeting with them yet, but it is possible that he's met with them. So my part of the hearing will be postponed until we find out if the entire plan is going to be approved by the commission. Then afterwards, I will continue as the architect for the building. But in the meantime, I'm going to just back out for a little while and let Ed take care of this, and he will set up his own dates with Jeff for the hearings. Is everybody all clear on what's going to happen now? I guess so.
I think so.
Okay.
Appreciate that update, and I would just offer an adjustment to what you offered earlier, and I would say the application has attracted some questions, not moving to decline the project, but just clarification of several questions. So we appreciate the update that you offered this evening. That's good news to have as part of this formulation of our position on the project. And in light of that, I'm inclined to suggest we, again, keep this hearing open if there are going to be additional plans provided by the architect.
I would add that you do have the option to approve with conditions, conditioned on the landscape architect taking certain actions, but if you are inclined to hold, that is your option as well.
Okay, okay.
If
Thank
the
you.
commission did or did not want to grant the waiver of the street line treatment, you could condition it on that the plan comply with that, and then my office could confirm that, and then it could
Okay.
move forward. But also, you could hold it open. So there are options.
Okay, thanks for pointing that out. We have more than one avenue in front of us right now. So
Well,
thank you. Yes?
Done, having heard what Heather just said, would you kindly state what I should expect and what the client should expect?
Well, we'll be able to state that more concretely when we come to act on this item later this evening. So actually, I would defer to my colleagues now in terms of a sense of whether to close the hearing with the information we have or and proceed to action or keep the hearing open.
So you haven't decided yet?
That's correct. That's
Okay.
correct.
All right, well,
Stay
thank you
tuned.
for explaining that. I said there were two things I wanted to discuss with you. The second thing is this. I owned a construction company for about 30 years, Samuel Kossoff and Sons General Contractors. I thought I'd like you to know that that firm that I owned did all of this oak paneling in the walls, the doors and window trims throughout the entire City Hall on all floors, including the doors and hardware. This was done in the late 70s, but we didn't do the ceiling because the ceiling was here, and I think everything else followed the basic design of the ceiling. And I just wanted you to know that.
Outstanding work. Thank you for pointing that out. I did not know that. Thank you. So I will now ask if there are any individuals who wish to speak in favor of this application to come forward to do so. And anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application, please come forward to do so. So, close, open. Okay, I think the consensus of the commission is to leave the hearing open. So, thank you very much for joining us this evening. Our next hearing?
Second public hearing is R 2003. This is a re-subdivision to combine two properties into one new lot at 1809 and 1811 Lodi Street. The Greater Syracuse Property Development Corporation are the owners and applicants, and both of these properties lie within a residential Class B1 zoning district.
Please, please.
I'm Caitlin Wright with the Greater Syracuse Property Development Corporation, 431 East Fayette Street, Syracuse, New York, 13202. You'll see on the re-subdivision map in your packet that 1809, where the two-family house is located, is only 27 feet wide, and next door there's a vacant lot that is only 28 feet wide. We wish to merge these two properties together so that whomever purchases 1809 from us will be able to install a driveway and off-street parking. 1809 does not currently have any off-street parking, and we hope that having the space to add that will make the property more marketable.
Seems pretty clear. Any questions? Any questions for the applicant? Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? If so, please come forward. Anyone wishing to speak in opposition to the application, please come forward. Okay, we'll declare this hearing closed and move to our next hearing.
Next two public hearings are companion pieces, but not necessarily dependent upon each other. R 2005 is a re-subdivision to combine two properties into one new lot at 841 and 861 Van Rensselaer Street. Allied Realty Corp. is the owner and applicant. He's live within a lakefront T5 zoning district. And the companion case is SP 2004. This is a special permit for self-storage. This is new construction. And this is 841 and 861 Van Rensselaer Street. Allied Realty Corp. is the owner and applicant, and also in the lakefront T5 zoning district.
Hi, good evening. I'm Joe Pietrofesa. I live at 207 Via Emilia in Palm Beach Gardens, Florida, 33418. I'm here tonight with Tim Mahoney from Mahoney Design and Build, James Owens from Mahoney, and Steve Calcerinos from CNS. Talk to you about I'll address the overall project. Obviously, we have a very small 15, I think, by 400 foot strip of land at 841 Van Rensselaer. And then 861 Van Rensselaer is 4+ acres. So the total amount that we're talking about here is just under 5 acres. It's been owned by multiple members of my family for decades, probably close to 50 years. It has always remained vacant. So as you can probably guess, if you ask multiple members of your family how much they think a piece of property is worth, you'll get multiple answers. I kind of decided to step up and take the risk and hopefully improve the property. It's pretty clear to us that if somebody doesn't do it within the family, it'll probably remain vacant for another 50 years. So that's why we're here tonight. I wanted to first address you tonight to kind of dispel any preconceived notions you might have when you hear the word self-storage. I'm happy to say the self-storage industry has changed dramatically over the last 5 years from both the design and usability standpoint. It has clearly now become more of a service for a community. It services small businesses, students, families, individuals. So in light of that and the recent growth in the area with Destiny, the new headquarters for Bankers Health, the 2 new hotels down in that area, and the enormous amount of new multifamily, both ground up plus renovated, that goes all the way through Franklin Square, now into downtown Syracuse, and including the new student housing at SU, there's clearly a need for this type of service for the community. Our site particularly addresses, and you'll see here, the need for climate-controlled self-storage. And you will see on our renderings and in our plans that the largest part of the whole development is the climate control aspect. So when we began planning this about a year ago, our goal then and our goal tonight is the same, and that was to build what I call kind of not your average self-storage. We certainly could build this project for a whole lot less money, but we're not doing that. We want to blend in and be good neighbors to the $300 million master plan that we have in the lakefront. I should also mention that we commissioned a professional independent market study on this site for this type of product, and I can provide you with that if you'd like, but it passed with flying colors as the need has grown. I think we've gone to great lengths here to fall in with all the design guidelines in the district. Any deviations pointed out in our submittals will be addressed here tonight by Tim and Jim. It's important to note that we're going to do our best to incorporate as much street retail as we can in the site. We've talked to some major national tenants who have an interest in some site-specific tenancy within the development. I've also talked to some local businesses who may have an interest in relocating to that area. So that is a part which we will go over with you. In the end, we are looking to probably invest as much as $6 to $7 million in this property, which is in great contrast, I might add, to some of the neighboring properties in the area, some of whom I've pointed out to you in a handout there, in and around that spot. So I thank you for your time. I appreciate your consideration. We would very much like to get this started as soon as possible, and I hope that we can meet with your approval. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Tim Mahoney with Mahoney Design and Build. Address is 4 Technology Boulevard, and that's Canastota, New York, 13032. So just to dovetail a little bit more about the project, what Joe just kind of outlined, I'll just give you a little bit of the details of the buildings. Just as you're looking at the renderings here, you're looking at what is known as Phase 1.
Maybe disengage the mic, and then you can just bring it right around because it's being recorded, and then we'll hear you and we'll get the recording as well.
Okay, thank you. So Phase 1 consists of 5 buildings. So we have the 2-story building, which you will see here in this rendering, and the 2-story building faces right on Van Rensselaer. And then the additional 4 buildings, which are in the rear of the property, you will see down here in this rendering. And the buildings in the back are a single story, and they're about consist of about 21,000 square feet of total square footage for the buildings. And the front building, or the 2-story building, is 36,000 square feet. It's an 18,000 square foot footprint. Of the 36,000 square feet, there is approximately just under 3,000 square feet of retail space that will either be occupied by the self-storage operation or hopefully leased to tenants as the owner finds those opportunities. The 2-story building height to the top of the tower is 36 feet, plus or minus, and the top, or the height of the single-story buildings is just under 16 feet tall, each building. There is a proposed Phase 2 for the project, which you will have seen in the proposed plans. And Phase 2 essentially adds the additional 2-story building that fronts again on Van Rensselaer. That's another 2-story building, and that building's about 11,000 square feet as it's proposed. Similar in details in terms of its finishes. And then in the back, there is another additional 22,000 square feet of single-story self-storage, which would be similar to the Phase 1 self-storage. All of the exterior finishes of the buildings, or of the building that fronts on Van Rensselaer, is a mixture of stone, brick, stucco, and then glass finishes on the exteriors of the building. The 4 buildings in the back are more of a traditional steel construction. The facility will be fenced, will be completely fenced in all the way around the perimeter of the property. There will be an access point, which you can see on the site plan, which is kind of in the center between the proposed first building and then the second building. That's the main entrance, which brings us in to the facility. There will be a automated gate for access control to the rear of the property. And then once you're inside the facility, that's the same access or exit point that you will exit from the rear of the property. The stormwater management system is in the rear of the property, which you'll see on the site plan, and that at this point is our preliminary design. And as we go through final designs, then we'll obviously tune that up a little bit on its physical size and layout. We did submit last Tuesday a couple of updated plans to Jeff based on comments that were made, and we did pick up those comments on the plan. So the plans that you may or may not have in front of you, there's just been a few changes, primarily in noting notes that were added to the plans. That's my overview at this time. if there's anything additional.
There is, just to get us started, and that is, if you could address, there are a number of waivers that are part of this project application, and I hope you have seen those enumerated before tonight. And so what the commission would ask is if you could kind of take them one by one and provide a rationale of the need for waiver in each instance, so that we have some understanding of a potential justification if the commission were to grant the waiver.
Okay, so I have a copy of this in the response from Jeffrey. So the first one, as we understand it, which would require the waiver, is the proposed deviates from a Part B, Section 9, Article 4, Paragraph 3.A, relative to the number of buildings. Okay. So our response to that would be the traditional self-storage is, in order to have the access to the individual units, you typically will have multiple buildings that will allow the drive-up access to the individual storage units. And so if you have just one large building, you don't necessarily have the ability to have that drive-up feature to the individual units. And that's why we put those buildings to the rear of the property, so that they would ultimately be behind the retail buildings up front. The relative to the building, the main two-story building up front, given the physical size of the property and the road frontage, it didn't seem practical to have one large building that spanned across the entire road frontage of the property. So we thought architecturally that it would be a much nicer appearance to have the two buildings, have them be mirrored to one another in architectural design, and have the entrance in between them. And then this also allows the ability for the second proposed building, which is phase 2, mind you, to be used for additional retail or other mixed-use opportunities, as opposed to being additional storage.
Just as a clarification, we're looking through the file, and we don't have anything submitted by you last week. So can you tell us what's different about the plans?
I don't have them.
They were dropped off on
You
Tuesday.
didn't drop them off. They either did not make their way to me, or I did not get to them, but what is before the planning commission right now are plans that were submitted on December 20th. And I apologize for that. I don't know what may have happened to the plans you dropped off. So yes, I would echo what the zoning administrator has asked, and if you could review the changes that would benefit the planning commission.
Okay, sure.
And if those changes eliminated any of the deviations?
Yeah, so it probably would be best to just go down this entire list.
Right, and if any were no longer necessary in light of the changes subsequent to December 20th, tell us that, if that's the case, as you go through the list.
So I may have to consult the rest of my team to get all these answers.
Absolutely. That's why they're here.
That's right, it's fair, it's a whole interactive process.
Okay, so the next item on the list from Jeff, again, this is from Jeffrey dated January 23rd of 2020, which was sent to Jim Owen, who is here tonight. So the second item is the relative, do I need to read?
Don't read the numbers,
the
just
entire
tell us
paragraph? Okay.
parking
Okay.
or trees or whatever it is.
Okay, so this is the bicycle parking. So, we need our site, yeah. So we have one copy which was for you, Jeff, but, so where should I put this so I can?
If you just describe where it is, we might be able to follow our copies that we have on our tablets.
It's not- There you go.
Teamwork.
Okay, so the bicycle parking has been added, and it's been added right to the rear, right to the right side of the building, towards the rear of the building, and it's noted as such. The bicycle, the required or requested bicycle rack. Okay. Okay, so Jim, help me with the parking on the, what was the change on our parking?
I think my name is Jim Owen, Mahoney Design and Build, 4 Technology Boulevard, Canastota, New York. So I think that it was just graphically shown, if you scaled it at 8.5 feet from the parking space width. And Steve has updated the plans to show them as being 9 foot wide, all the parking spaces.
Okay, so it was just a notation?
Yeah, well, I think it was probably drawn.
They were drawn in as 8.5 by 18, but they've been revised to 9 by 18.
Okay, there we go. That's the answer to the question.
So then
They've been revised to the appropriate size, and it's been reflected on the drawing.
It's the need for this waiver then, correct? If- Pending
Okay.
confirmation, of course, of course. Okay.
The next item on the page here is the planting of the trees, and that the ratio of trees for parking spaces. And so that has also been updated on the plan. It's on the site plan. It has been updated and reflected on the site plan, but there's also a landscaping plan that was submitted, and it's also reflected on the new site plan.
So the requirement is,
Excuse me, landscaping plan.
I'm sorry, the parking lots shall be planted with the street tree, with tree. So did you add them to the parking lot, or did you add them to the street side along the sidewalk, or both?
I believe there was a comment regarding shade trees. The required number of shade trees have been added to the ends of parking lots where we could put them. I believe it was 6 in total. And that has been
that's right.
the site plan as well as the landscape.
Okay.
So I just want to get a clarification from staff. So it says in the staff report, the proposal requires 6 indigenous shade trees, and then the next one is
Trees
that
at the ends of parking.
there have to be 5 at the, so it's,
Now, the trees can be double counted,
okay,
so I will be looking for trees at the end of the parking bays and a minimum of 6. You know, so whichever is, I suppose it's greater. You either need enough trees for the parking bays or enough shade trees. You don't necessarily need both. You can use one towards the other, but you have to meet both requirements with 6 or 8 or 10 trees, however many it takes. But no, you do not need to have a combination.
so it's hard to tell from here, but there are 6 within the parking area someplace?
Yeah, we
You have 2 there?
2 right here. We have 1 here, 1 here.
And the other 2?
Those 2.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Let's turn it first then.
Shall we go to the next? Okay. So the next one is a waiver, potentially, I guess it's a waiver. This is the relative to the exterior finishes of our proposed buildings. And the requirements are either brick, stone, wood, or cementous clapboard siding, which is how it's written. Earlier I mentioned to you that the exterior of our building is comprised of many different architectural elements. Brick is one of them, stone is one of them, and then we have what is known as stucco or ephes. And ephes is a exterior finish, which is a cementous finish applied to an exterior insulation board. We felt that the overall design of our building being the intent, actually, Steve, the intent of the building is to try and capture the design of what is typical of, you know, an older looking or manufacturing building back in the day. And so we took that approach with this design so that it didn't look like this brand new building necessarily, but it looked like a building that's been here in the city. And we kind of modeled it after a lot of other buildings throughout the city when we came up with this design and the architectural details. And so the ephes finish, which is a relatively small portion of the exterior finish, is the portion that is in the lighter beige, and then some of these gray elements as well. And that's how we came up with that design. And it was based on what we felt was kind of typical of this style of building that would have been built, you know, many years ago. Do you want to add? Okay.
I just would like to ask for clarification. The original plans that I reviewed that were submitted December 20th illustrated a metal roof. I did not include that in my findings for deviations. I just would like to clarify that you're still proposing a metal roof, and if so, just point out to the Planning Commission that that would be added to the exterior finishing materials deviation.
Okay. The intent is to have the metal roof, and that is illustrated on the towers, on the flanking towers on either corner of the building. And that is a standing seam metal roof.
Just clarification to staff. It says exterior finished materials on all facades. It's the roof, though. Have we interpreted it in the past to be the roof?
I understand what you're saying. I don't think that there is a standard for roofs in the lakefront, but I think we're just pointing it out that is a material that is not listed.
But then neither are shingles or...
But if it only applies to recycled materials, then I believe materials would be not subject to that.
And just as a note, our metal roof, again, the idea there was to be similar to some of the other buildings that are in the area, and the post office has a similar blue metal roof or metal roofing as well. So that's kind of where we picked up on that.
It's just a, excuse me, it's just a corner element really that has visible roof. It's basically a flat roof otherwise.
That is correct. That's right. On the main two-story building. That's correct. Mm-hmm. Shall I continue?
List, I think architectural openings is next.
Yes, architectural openings. So this was, I guess, maybe a little confusing even to us in terms of the way that it's interpreted, but when we look at the building and we look at the facade of the building, we are looking at our design elements as the entire rectangular box, if you will, and then everything that's inside it as an element. So that then makes our elements taller than they are wider. So I'm not sure exactly what the question or the concern was, but that's the way we perceive it in our design.
So I think generally architectural openings are doors and windows. So you've got groupings of 3. Are they individual units, or is it one big horizontal unit?
Are we referring to here?
Right, in each bay.
Yes, so this is one large element, one large opening. And these are the individual panes of glass. So
They're not individual units. It's one large unit.
So we're referring to the glass, is that correct? Is that's what the
Or-
question, is that the question is?
I'm trying to get at, trying to help you here.
Yep.
So
So these are
if I
individual,
was looking at that as an individual window,
yes.
I would say you're all right.
These are
Because the height.
These are
is
3
greater than the
individual
width.
windows in that
In each
element.
of those bays, are they each 3 individual?
That is
units?
correct.
So each individual window opening is taller than its width. They're just grouping them in 3s.
In the past, you've looked at the opening as a whole and not,
Really?
yes. Can I just go back really quick? I'll just read you about
Materials?
roofs. Yeah. So there's no, this is what we say about, now I lost it. Okay. Buildings shall have flat, hip, or symmetrical pitched roofs. Flat roof buildings shall have concealed HVAC equipment. Pitched roofs shall have slopes no less than 5 to 12, except porch roofs may be sheds with pitches no less than 3 to 12. All gables shall be parallel with the street. So there's nothing about materials for roofs. So I just want to clarify that.
So now we move to everyone's favorite signage. And the last 3 waivers pertain to signage of one kind or another.
So I guess we'll take the first one, which is the quantity of signs.
The sign band.
Yeah, relative to, right, we have 5 proposed signs as opposed to 1 singular band of signs. And the intent is, rather than having 1 large continuous band of signage, to have these smaller signs that are, I think, just more attractive. They fit into the architectural design of the building, and they're less, in your face. And so when we looked at the signage and what we felt was an appropriate way to sign the building or add signage to the building, we took the approach that, smaller signs better than just 1 continuous band of sign, whatever would be allowed in terms of total square footage across the face of the building. And that's why we did that.
So, just for clarification, I'm trying to find it on the drawings. For some reason, I'm not being successful. So it says in our notes that there are 5 of them on the towers total. So clearly at this corner, I see 2.
Yeah,
And where would the rest of them be?
so there's 2 towers. So there's two on each tower.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then this is a small sign here for this retail space here, and that's the 5th one that is being referenced.
And these are all for Syracuse store.
Yeah, so they're on the 2 towers. There are 2 signs on each tower. Those are both for Sierra Store. And then this 5th one is for this proposed retail space, whatever that may be at this point. If you were to look at the plan, it says FedEx, but that is a proposed tenant. One that we are talking to, but no guarantees.
Questions on the sign band? Okay. And then the last 2 waivers pertain to also signage, but type and area of what you're proposing.
So I have a question of staff. In this deviation, are the 4, the 8 4-square-foot signs, do they include the 5 we just talked about? Or they're in
No.
addition to?
They are in addition to, I would just clarify and ask for clarification that I came up with a total of 13 signs being proposed for the 2 buildings, total. Consisting of 5 signs on the towers as illustrated on sheet SK1. And then there are 8 wall signs, if you will, as opposed to perpendicular signs on
I
the
see.
sides of the 2 buildings. And those would be considered a sign band in that they're all along one elevation. So it's just a matter of they've got 8 of those. And they're wall signs as opposed to perpendicular.
So Jeff, can you repeat what you just said?
I
That would,
don't know if I can.
but that, would those,
There's a total of 13 signs being proposed.
but the ones you just noted were effectively in a sign band?
Right, so item 20 on your report
Right.
talks about a single external sign band. So with respect to that requirement, the signs on the towers deviate. And there are 5 of those signs
Outside of the sign band?
outside of the sign band.
Gotcha.
I suppose those could be, well, then item 21 identifies a requirement that a single sign of less than 4 square feet may be attached perpendicular to the facade for tenant signs, and they're proposing to install 8 wall signs, which are essentially parallel to the facade. I did not count the 5 signs on the towers towards or against item 21, and perhaps I should have. But item 21 is dealing more with the sign band, but they're wall signs. They're parallel to the building as opposed to perpendicular. So arguably, you could include the wall signs on the towers as part of 21 as well.
did not.
Why wouldn't the ones in 21 be part of the allowable sign band?
It is, what is deviating with 21 is that they're not perpendicular.
Does the issue regarding the sign band require that they be hung perpendicular? I thought we've reviewed other
Yes.
things in the lakefront where they're flush to the
A
wall.
single sign band of less than 4 square feet may be attached perpendicular to the facade. Now, I admit, I'm interpreting perpendicular to be a projecting sign.
But up above, it just says a single external sign band may be applied to the facade.
Yes.
Here, I'll read you the direct regulation. So,
Okay.
4 signs in T5. Address numbers shall be attached to the building and the mailbox. A single external sign band may be applied to the facade of each building, provided it does not exceed 3 feet in height. A single sign for each business of less than 4 square feet may be attached perpendicular to the facade. Signage may only be externally lit. Signage within shop front windows may be neon. Those are the 4 standards for T5.
So 21 is focused on tenant signage as being perpendicular.
I have many questions that are outside of this application.
I think what you need to, maybe to put this into perspective, the lakefront, the intent of the lakefront district was to have this walkable, active, pedestrian-friendly, active storefront. So these regulations are intended that a building like this would most likely have multiple storefronts of individual businesses, not one large single-use business. So best we can do is, in order to compare, we have to tell you what it is versus what they're doing. So I think it's up to the commission to ask, why the particular proposal has as many signs and why they are where they are, and then you can have justification from the applicant and then make a decision based upon that, weighing it against the purpose of the lakefront zoning district.
Okay.
Okay, if I can jump back in. So just a couple points. I would say, number one, phase 2, we don't know what phase 2 is yet, although it will have signage, definitely. So I don't know that we're, and if we have to revise it, maybe we will, or maybe we can, but I don't know that we're really asking for 13 different sign variances. So comment number one. Comment number two is relative to the sign ban. Again, I just want to point out that, again, architecturally, as opposed to just having one large band across this building, given the size of the building and the allowable square footage that sign could be, we felt that it was just a much nicer architectural look to have the smaller signs on the tower, which is why we did that. Relative to the perpendicular signs, we certainly can entertain having perpendicular signs 4 square feet or less for our tenant spaces. I don't think that that's objectionable. I'm not sure that maybe we missed that detail, but I don't think that's objectionable. I guess that's it.
We're going through all of those deviations. Does that conclude your presentation, or do you want to move from the deviations to another part of your presentation for us?
I'm here to answer whatever questions that you.
Okay, that's what I was trying to figure out, if we're at the question stage. So,
Again, I think it might be of staff. Typically for the re-subdivision application, we would see what the existing lots are and then the proposed new lots. So I couldn't find anything that showed the existing lot configuration.
Because I think one of the lots is like teeny tiny strip of 15 square feet, so we might not be able to see it on
Thank you.
there.
Okay.
That's
I was
why.
looking, but
Typically,
Okay.
yes, you're correct. But I just want to clarify one thing. It's a single sign for each business of less than 4 square feet may be attached perpendicular. So it's not 4 square feet or less, it's less than 4 square feet, for the record. So you don't submit plans with a 4 square foot sign.
Additional questions for the applicant team?
We have notes that the landscape plan conflicts with the site plan. Can we explore
That
that?
is correct. I noted there were discrepancies
between landscaping as illustrated on the site plan versus a landscape plan. So it would have been sheet C101 versus sheet LS. Specifically, LS is a little more robust than the site plan.
That's correct. The landscaping plan just goes into all the detail, showing the, thank you, Steve. Showing, we picked up all of the changes, or all of the notes that Jeff had given to us. So there were many, so just kind of encompassing all of them. We moved the sidewalk closer to the building to get that onto the property line. We added the additional trees along Van Rensselaer. We added the trees in the parking lot areas, as noted.
this doesn't include the trees that should be to your right there.
Just paused as you commented, and that's exactly what I was going to say. Is I see that we're missing 2 of our trees that we showed on the site plan, but we'll correct that. And then it just goes into the additional detail of the plants, specifies of the plants that we're going to use. And again, additional noting that has been added to the plan, just picking up for clarification on some of Jeff's comments.
I just would ask if you could clarify your comments regarding the sidewalk. I don't believe I made any comments about moving the sidewalk, and I would certainly ask and recommend that the sidewalk location be coordinated with DPW, specifically our transportation planner.
It was Neil who made the comment about
Oh, okay.
That's correct.
sidewalks.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, I misspoke, Jeff. Didn't mean to put that
that's
one
all
on you. But there was a couple of sidewalk-related comments, and we just picked those up.
All right.
Additionally.
With respect to Neil's comments.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep, Neil Burke.
Further questions for staff or the applicant? We're set. Thank you all very much for the presentation and the response to the questions. Are there individuals who would like to speak in favor of this application if they haven't spoken already? Please, sir.
Hi, my name is Bill Adinos. I'm with CBRE. I'm a associate commercial real estate broker. And I just wanted to speak in favor of the project. I think given the growth in the Inner Harbor and other developments within the city, as well as specifically apartments, the high occupancy rate. I think it's an important amenity to have to those factors, and I just think it'd be great to support ongoing growth and continuing, offering amenities to these apartment residents and growing businesses.
Other individuals who may wish to speak in favor of the application, please come forward. Is there anyone who would like to speak in opposition to the application? If so, please come to the podium.
Steve, if I could add, in favor of the program, the development, I think, has been sent to Heather's office. I have a
Each
correspondence.
received a letter from Councilor Carney
Counselor Carney.
regarding the project. This evening, we received that. We are at a point now, do we close the hearing? It sounds like the office has not, or the staff has not yet seen, maybe the office has seen the updated plans, but we'll need to have those updated plans and confirmation of the various points that you outlined for us this evening. Is there a sense that we're in a strong enough position that we can close this hearing and predicate any action conditional on those materials being received and confirmed? Okay. And that, yes.
If you want to deliberate on which waivers the commission decides to grant, and then we can confirm that those either comply or not, you can make a condition on that. And then if any revisions are necessary based upon your deliberation and your decision, then we can work with the applicant to make sure those are in compliance with your conditions.
Okay. And we'll have some more discussion on those waiver requests when we deliberate specifically on this application. But at this stage, it appears to me as though, consistent with the additional updates that we had this evening, several of those waivers go away. I believe, if I was hearing correctly and keeping count, the two related to trees disappear. There would no longer be a need for the bike parking waiver, and the waiver pertaining to parking space dimensions, I think, would also go away. So that removes 4 of the, whatever it was, 8 or 10 or something earlier. So we would just be looking at the balance of those. Again, assuming when the plans, finalized plans, get to the office, staff can confirm all those points that were talked about this evening. So at a minimum, we've, again, on the surface, have eliminated the need for 4 of those waivers that we thought were needed at the start of this meeting this evening. So, okay, is that everyone's understanding at this point in terms of the count? So I think we are in a position, we'll close this hearing. We'll move to our next hearing, and we can discuss more about the remaining requested waivers when we get to this item.
Thank you, and we appreciate your time hearing us this evening.
Oh, you're welcome, and yes, for clarification, we're closing both hearings. They were companion cases. We'll act separately when the time comes, but we heard them concurrently, and we're closing both at the same time. So, and thanks to the entire team for the clarification and the input this evening.
Okay, the next public hearing is 3S2004. This is a 3-mile limit subdivision review in the town of Lafayette. Monreal subdivision is the name of it, and it's to divide one property into 2 new lots at 4242 Barker Hill Road.
So if the applicant is here or their representative, please come to the podium, provide your name and address and a summary of the application. Is there anyone? Oh, I was stunned for a moment, but is there anyone who would like to speak in favor of this application? So please come forward to provide your comments. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward. So, as is often the case with these 3-mile limit cases, we have no speakers and presenters. I would just ask to confirm with the staff that the application that resides in the office is complete.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So on that basis, we will close this hearing. And I believe that's our last hearing for this evening. We will now return to the top of the list and act on those where we are able to generate a motion that passes. The first one was held open, SP-20-03, the special permit for the restaurant on Erie Boulevard East. The second one we can act on. We closed the hearing, the re-subdivision on Lodi Street, R-20-03. We had a presentation, no speakers beyond the presenter. Is there a motion on this?
Move to approve with a negative declaration.
Second.
All in favor?
I just want to note that because
Discussion.
of the unusually small size of the original lots, that this is a reasonable way to address the property.
Further discussion or clarification? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? That re-subdivision is approved. Our next case in another re-subdivision is R-20-05, the very re-subdivision we just talked about for Van Rensselaer Street. Is there a motion on this re-subdivision?
Move approval with a negative declaration.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? This re-subdivision is also approved. Now moving to the companion case for the same site on Van Rensselaer, the special permit SP-20-04. The presentation for which was just concluded. Is there a motion on this? And just to recap what we just spoke about in the public hearing, if I get to the right page. Yes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This initially, as proposed, would have required 10 waivers. And as we just summarized a few moments ago, 4 of those are no longer necessary based upon the updates that we heard this evening that will be substantiated by plans received and confirmed by the office. So that leaves us with a project as outlined here with 6 waivers that would be necessary.
Is the 6th for the frontage build out that we didn't talk about, but it's that
This one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
No, the frontage build-out was not a deviation.
it wasn't.
It's a note, however, that it's based on completion of a 2-phase proposal and constructing both buildings.
So it's not a deviation, but a note. My math is still good. 10 minus 4 equals 6.
But to the point, Jeff, that you just made, they, now we're counting the second phase, second building to get the required frontage, but you can't have 2 main buildings on the lot, so it seems a little
Yeah,
crazy.
But that's,
That's a waiver.
deviation.
Right.
Deviation.
Unless they
That's the
re-subdivided to split the lot.
Which was why I asked about the lot thing before.
So Rebecca's pointing out item 26 on your report.
Right.
Given the total proposed build-out over 2 phases, they're in compliance with the build-out requirement.
If we grant the waiver for the second
If you
building.
grant the waiver, yes. Did not pick up on that part, though.
Insurance company or healthcare people. Or, you granted it? Okay, well, so we've set a precedent, okay. Well, one case isn't a precedent, but. Okay. So Jeff, I have to go back to this sign band thing, or Heather, or both of you. So if we were talking about traditional architectural design, the sign band typically was above the storefront, which is sort of kind of what's being proposed here, except in our rules, the signs within the sign band have to be perpendicular. They can't be flush to the building.
No,
Oh, for the love of heaven. Okay.
they're two separate things. You can have one sign band,
One continuous band.
so
And
long
what
as
they're
it,
proposing is a
Several.
truncated
Right.
treatment, just on the towers.
So we don't use that terminology the way it traditionally was in architectural design.
no, and unfortunately,
go.
there is no definition in the lakefront regulations.
So forget everything I was about to say. Okay.
Thinking that I'm just going to clarify. So the sign ban, we consider one continuous thing. The perpendicular sign that we were talking about was signs that are no more than 4 square feet.
Less than 4 square feet.
No more than, less than 4 square feet. Big difference mathematically.
3 feet, 11 and a half inches.
0.99.
3.999.
It's the metric system. Okay. So the sign band, sign area are 2 different questions.
Yes. I think it might be helpful for the commission to just consider, for this particular use, for the size of the building and the openings that are, have the opportunity to have signage, the commission should just consider what would be the most appropriate. And if there's any additional discussion, the applicant is still here in order to justify or talk about some alternatives to signage, if that's what the commission chooses.
Or we come to a proposal and that there is a time for modification on another event, we might sit down and look at a modification if they have a retail tenant and that retail
Yes.
tenant has a special request.
Certainly.
If we approve something now, we have set the conditions about what the staff can confirm, we approve certain conditions tonight. If they then have a tenant that has special needs for some sign requesting a modification of what we've done, we visit that later on. Precedent setting or not, we come back to it. No, that's not reassuring, sure.
Yeah, I'm more frustrated at the language in the document, which to all of you should be no surprise, having dealt with me before. Okay. I move to approve with a negative declaration, granting the waiver for the one principal building item. The bicycles have been taken care of, the dimension of the parking stalls has been taken care of, the trees have been taken care of. This is all assuming they've been taken care of, sorry. Granting the waiver for the IFAS because it is being used in limited quantities, although I would heartily recommend true stucco, and would suggest you think about that. Granting the waiver for the architectural openings because I really don't think it's necessary, but I'm going to grant it because of the way they're actually designed, but I'm going to grant that. So the 5 sign issue, there are 4 on the towers and there's 1 randomly someplace else. I forget what the explanation was.
If you look at sheet SK1,
Oh, for the love of heaven, SK1.
there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 towers illustrated on that sheet. 6 facades, tower facades.
Right, there's a
And
the
there
north
are-
elevation has
And there are
1.
5 signs
The
on.
east elevation has 1.
That's the 5th one for FedEx if they come.
So the north elevation
So why
has
isn't the
1
FedEx
sign
one like all the last
on the
one?
tower to the right.
Gotcha. So wait, so now you're messing me up. Why isn't the one that's the FedEx one, why weren't you including that with the other, quote, storefront business signs? It's basically kind of the same thing, except they use somebody's name.
I'm not following your question.
So if you look at that same sheet, you look at the schematic north elevation where they've got all the signs above the storefronts,
Yes.
and if you look at, where is it on this drawing? I lost it now. And if you look at the north elevation phase 1, where they have that 1 storefront next to the tower.
So I'm double counting.
Well, it's not a matter of double counting. To me, that's no different than the other ones. I can see where the ones on the tower you're treating one way, but that one next to the tower,
Gets lumped in with the other.
it seems like that's more along the lines of all the other storefront signs. Please help me out here. Which I'm gonna grant all the damn waivers anyway, it's the language used is just terrific. It's so not what you do when you do a building, and it's killing me. You see what I'm saying?
No.
Ugh.
I'm afraid I don't.
Would
Can you
this help?
come here?
Would this be helpful?
Nope.
No? Okay.
Sure,
Let me make a
okay.
suggestion.
Yep.
Perhaps you could just look at the building, the facade, the site plan, and what is being built, and hold off on the signage. Give your advice as to what the commission thinks is appropriate signage for this type of use, and they can come back at another time.
Sure,
It's just a suggestion.
No,
I'm
no.
not saying.
No, to be perfectly honest, I think the plan is fine, and I'm about to grant all the waivers. I just think we've lumped 1 sign into the wrong place. That's my concern. So for the record, the 4 on the towers, sure. The 5th one that's in that clause, to me, belongs in the clause below it. To me, it's a storefront sign just like all the others, in terms of where they've located it. So my motion includes the waiver for the tower signs, and I would recommend that the waiver for the non-perpendicular signs be granted, although I would request that the applicant talk to staff about whatever that definition is, and if they really have to be perpendicular, to see if we can come to an accommodation. I just think it's nuts. I think I'm done. I think I got them all. That was so great.
Second.
Is there a question over
Did you follow all of that?
item legal counsel? Was there a question?
Oh, no, I just wanted to advise that if you had questions for the applicant, you can request that, but
Oh,
it doesn't look like
Oh,
we need it
it's the
anymore.
zoning ordinance I have questions with,
Okay.
and with the new one too, but that's a whole.
We have a carefully thought-through motion. We have a second. We have an opportunity for discussion on the motion. Is there any discussion or further clarification needed before? If not, All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? The project is approved with the 6 waivers enumerated in the motion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, thank you.
Okay, that takes care of our hearings for this evening, but we have, pardon me?
One more hearing. Item
You have
5.
Oh, I'm
one more
sorry.
to vote on. Thank you.
I slighted our 3-mile limit case this evening. Sorry. So that does bring us to 3S-20-04, our only 3-mile limit case tonight in the town of Lafayette. Is there a motion on this?
I move approval with a negative declaration.
Second?
Discussion. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? So the 3-mile limit in Lafayette is approved. That concludes our action on the hearings that were closed this evening. We move now on to correspondence that we've had from the Common Council.
Yes, so this body approved a special permit for a restaurant with, I believe, 7 waivers for SB 1912. The Common Council remanded that back for reconsideration. We have sent the correspondence from the city clerk to the applicant and the owner. We have not heard if they still wish to pursue the special permit in its entirety, so we're just giving you this for information purposes, and then if they do come back, they will reapply, and you'll be hearing that on your schedule.
Okay, so no action required at this time. It's a point of information pending further pursuit of the project by the applicant.
Yes.
And based on this letter, they won't come to us anyway. The council is telling us they want us to resolve the encroachment issue first. That's not us anyway. Right?
Correct, so, thank you. But they still will have to go for another hearing because they want the waivers to be reconsidered as well.
Right, but would they
But
not just
only
go-
after an encroachment is approved.
Right.
Correct, yes,
Right.
yes, thank you.
So a larger question for legal counsel, I guess, would be on the matter of encroachment that the council has raised or the city clerk has raised. Do we look at that request or that position isolated to this case only, or should we going forward indicate to an applicant that encroachment needs to be resolved before other issues come before the Planning Commission?
I think that might be a policy discussion that needs to happen. Encroachment certainly is within the realm of authority of the Common Council. And seeing that that was a part of this, their reasoning for remanding, I think that's a discussion that we should have. But I would want to get advice of other council as well that deal with the Common Council to see if that's their position moving forward.
Okay.
And we can make a recommendation based on that.
Okay, because that's what occurred to me was maybe this signifies a little bit of a shift, whereas before we've recommended, and then the council would act on the encroachment question, either yes or no. And now I'm just wondering if that might, this more recent correspondence might indicate a shift there.
And certainly, the way it's happening now is appropriate in that you can legally place reasonable conditions, and conditioning something on the approval of an encroachment or an approval by another board is acceptable. But it is worth seeing if the position of the council has changed and they are more likely to remand based on an encroachment issue in the future. It's certainly worth getting their feeling or whether we should be holding these until those issues are
Right,
taken
so we can
care of.
advise applicants
Yes.
whichever way they should proceed. Okay.
And I think it's obviously it would also be good if we showed some consistency to the public. So if you could ask whoever it is you need to ask.
Yes, certainly.
I think it would be best for applicants as well as this body and the council that if we're consistent. So if you could get us a feeling on that, that'd be great.
Okay, is there any other new business this evening other than the authorization for the hearings on the 24th?
Heather, did you want to provide the rezone update?
Oh, okay, so we went through correspondence, let me just put a check right there. As far as the public hearings and authorizations, we would add the special permit for the restaurant at 1706 Erie Boulevard East. In addition, it has been advised, and I will let my attorney correct me if I'm wrong, that as the Common Council is coming to a conclusion or finishing the scoping process with respect to seeker for rezone, it has been advised by law that this body authorize a public hearing for the law itself, for the actual proposed zoning ordinance. Don't have the comments yet. The Common Council does not have the comments yet that for scoping, and we will have to bring a final.
That should be happening at the next meeting.
Yeah, a final scoping document to the Common Council for their consideration. It's been suggested that the March hearing date would be perhaps a good time for this body to hold the hearing on rezone. They will not be able to vote, however, because seeker will not have been concluded at that time by a Common Council, but that would be a good time for you to gather comments from the public, as well as give comments that this body has back to Common Council for their consideration in order to make a seeker determination.
So what is the trigger for the public hearing on our behalf?
It's the city charter.
Okay.
Yeah.
And it's our action to make a recommendation to the council as to whether or not to
Yes.
adopt this law. So that's our first official act, is to
Yes.
hold a public hearing and collect information on whatever is the last version of the document in the map. So it's-
Yes.
Okay. And that was what you gave us the last meeting?
Yes.
The most current version, yes.
Okay. So we have what's necessary, the general public has what's necessary?
Yes.
Okay.
So does this hearing need to be a standalone hearing, or can it be embedded within the commission's regularly scheduled?
It can be either. That's up to you.
Okay.
It may be advisable to have it at a separate day or start a regular hearing earlier. And that I hope that there's a lot of public interest, so it might be a long hearing. So,
Separate.
I think we should do something separate.
and if you would like to take some time to consider that and advise us what.
If we're
what
talking about
times.
March, we have time to do that. We would have to give, 30 days notice, or?
Well, the public notice requirements, what is it? Is it 7 or 10?
Oh, it's more, It's
72 hours for a special meeting,
Oh.
but it would be a public hearing, so we would have to provide more notice. But it would be within our 3 weeks that we
Okay,
normally would
okay.
authorize.
good. So it looks like we should regroup and think about some options in March, and this sounds like there's plenty of time to do that. Okay, thank you for that update. So,
And also, just as far as this hearing schedule for the 24th, if you so move that these hearings are appropriate, and there will be a project plan review that will typically be new business for the Van Rensselaer, Erie Boulevard, Tracy Street, for Richmond UAS properties. If that's consistent with the plan, the district plan, that is, let me go back. If the Common Council adopts the amended district plan, and then the project plan review is consistent with that, it can be a new business item. That's how typically we've treated that, but that's why you don't see that here. There would have to be another action for the physical
For the specific project.
The very specific project, yes. Thank you.
So you're saying that might end up on here, even though we haven't acted on these three?
No, I'm not, because these are hearings that would not typically be a
Got it.
hearing, unless you decided it should be, but really could not vote on that project, that specific plan, until the common council agrees to
Right.
or approves the amended
Gotcha.
overall district plan. I'm just giving that as a point of clarification in case you're wondering why it's not on there.
Okay, and I have the very last item that's on here, which is the re-subdivision on South Salina.
Yes.
That's in the National Register District, so will we have the Preservation Board's comments on that?
Yes, you will.
And we will know more than just the two lot sizes, hopefully. We'll know why we're doing this.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else to add to that list of hearing authorizations for the 24th? Now, is there a motion to authorize those hearings?
So moved.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? Those are all authorized. Anything else to come before the commission this evening?
No.
Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Discussion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, say nay. Any abstentions? We are adjourned until the 24th. Thank you all.